system, the important elements we know that we have slab, RCC slab, we have RCC beam, and then column, and then foundation, and then whenever you talk about the tall buildings, we have a shear wall. So these are the 5 important elements. We start from slab, beam, column, foundation, and wall. So these are all the members. So how to design and detail? So detailing is often to be preparation of the working drawing, showing the size and location of the reinforcement in concrete structure. Whenever you design the concrete structure, we all know that the concrete structure consists of 2 materials. One is reinforced concrete, another one is reinforcement. When you know concrete, we all know that it's we are preparing the concrete using cement, sand, aggregate, and water, and then we provide reinforcement in the RCC members in the tension zone, because we all know that concrete is strong in carrying compression and weak in tension. Whereas if you look at the reinforcing bar, so reinforcing bar it's a very strong in resisting tension, and it is equally strong in resisting compression. Whenever you talk about the compression, because of that, when you discuss about the doubly reinforced beam, that is, you provide reinforcement both in tension zone and compression zone. So whenever you are providing tension zone and compression zone, that itself indicates the steel is capable of resisting compressive forces also. So whenever you talk about steel, steel is strong in resisting tension, and it is equally strong in resisting compressive force also. Now, whenever you want to have any structural design, so we provide the reinforcement in the tension zone. So after designing it, the design involves the first we are going to have a structural configuration. We are going to get what are the various probable loads on the structure. We are going to do the structural analysis to find out what are the various forces acting in the structure, like axial force, shear force, bending moment, and torsion moment. So once you know that, we are going to design, and then we are going to arrive what is the size of your member, what is your beam size, what is your column size, what is your foundation size, etc. We are going to design, and what is the reinforcement required, also the design we are going to get. So if you take the example of a beam, what is the size of the beam? So if you say that the size of the beam is 230 millimeter by 400 millimeters, then obviously that is your concrete dimension. Then what is the steel reinforcement? So you may say that I need the bottom steel of 3 number of 16 mm diameter bar, and as well as I need the top, I need the 2 number of 20 mm diameter bar. So this is what we are going to get from the design output. We get the overall cross section of the particular member, and what is the area of the concrete required, and what is the area of the steel required, that we are going to get from the design. So once you know the design, then we have to prepare the drawing, because drawing only, it's a communicate between the designer and then the contractor and then the executor. So concrete links the communication. Okay, concrete communicates to all the people. The drawings communicate to all the people, like designer, the contractor, builder, and as well as the worker. So this is a communication. So you have to prepare the drawings in a detailed manner, and then you have to submit it for execution. Now, good detailing ensures that reinforcement and concrete interact efficiently to provide satisfactory behavior throughout the complete range of loading. Now, what happened? We use concrete and steel. The last webinar itself, I told we use steel because of that there is a good bond between both concrete and steel. Now, whenever you are taking any structural member, for example, you take a beam. Suppose you are loading the beam is going to bend. Whenever it's bending, suppose you have a simply supported beam, so the tension occurs at the bottom. So whatever the moment required, for the moment you are going to calculate the AST. Now we have to provide in terms of the bar. As I already mentioned, we are going to provide it 3 number of 16 mm diameter bar. Now these bar, how we are going to anchor into your other member, whether sometimes it will be anchored into the column, sometimes it will be anchored into the beam. So there is a connection between beam to beam connection. There is a connection between beam to column connection. Now, how we are going to detail it? So the detailing in such a way that the force has to flow smoothly to the all the structural members, and then finally it goes to the foundation and then soil. So the smooth flow of forces ensured by the proper detailing. So detailing plays a very, very important role. So what is going to be the bar, where you have to cut the bar for wrapping, or whether you are going to weld it, what is going to be the development length, how you are going to anchor. So all the details are available in the drawing. Then that is you are doing the detailing, and then that is available in the drawing. So this is what your importance of your detailing. Now, particularly we are coming to the ductile detail. Now, already I told the brittle behavior. Now, if you are on the right hand side, if you look at the curve between you look at the curve drawn in red as well as the curve drawn in some cyan color. Now, the brittle material, what happens? It reaches its ultimate and suddenly fails without giving any warning. Whereas in ductile material, what happens? It is reached the ultimate, and it further there is a lot of strain, this increasing strain, and then it is going to fail. So whenever you are going to fail, the brittle failure, the building suddenly collapse means the people cannot escape from that building, or people are unable to save their life because the building may kill the people. Normally in earthquake design, we used to tell earthquakes do not kill people, whereas the man-made structure do kill the people. So if you are having the proper detailing it, what will happen? It will give, even though the structural members are going to fail, the member will fail in a ductile manner, so that we have enough warning or enough time we can escape from that building and save the human life. So that is the main advantage of the ductile detailing. Because whenever I am asking the students may always raise the question, sir, you are designing for earthquake. There are zones, various zones are there, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, and zone 5. Now, what is the guarantee that earthquake will occur in a particular area? And what is the guarantee that the magnitude, whatever we are designing, whether it is not going to exceed that? But there are cases, even in Gujarat, where whatever they design, okay, they consider the zone 3, but what happened? The earthquake already occurred is the zone 5 magnitude. So what happened? Many buildings failed. Then after the occurrence of the Bhuj earthquake, now the code writers, they reclassified the Gujarat region in the not zone 3, now they are in zone 5. So it is keep on, the force may alter. We don't have any control on the earthquake force. So whatever the earthquake design principle is, we design for mild earthquake, we design for moderate earthquake, and we design for severe earthquake. Whenever you talk about the mild earthquake, some of your structural elements are permitted to crack or fail. Whenever moderate earthquake occurs, few structural elements damage can occur. But whenever you talk about the very severe earthquake, you cannot safeguard the building because your structure is not designed for very severe earthquake. But at the time, the building is allowed to fail, but it should fail in a ductile manner. So how it will fail ductile manner? So that is governed by, if you are doing the detailing according to IS 13920, the structure will fail in a ductile manner. So that's what I explained. So the better behavior to improve the ductility of the building, earthquake resistant is concerned about the ensuring the damages in the building during earthquake are of acceptable variety, and also that they occur at the right places in right amount, so that it failed in a ductile manner. So our ultimate aim is we have to make the material or make the building as a ductile building. It's a simple example is on the right hand side. For example, you know that a brick masonry. If you are putting a lot of compressive force, it is capable of, or the brick wall is capable of resisting compression. But if you look at it, very small tension forces are occurring it, so there is a separation it may fail. So most of the times, the conventional load-bearing system consists of, you have a wall and then slab. Whenever the earthquake occur on a particular, even a smaller magnitude of earthquake, what happens? The ground is going to shake. Whenever it's shaking, the brick wall may fail because the mortars and the bricks are not capable of resisting tension. So the brick wall may fail. Because of the brick wall fails, the slab, the RCC slab, what happens? It will come as a rigid body, and then it may fall on the top, it may fall, and then people may trap inside. Now, after the trapping inside, it's extremely difficult to rescue. That is a major problem, because whenever RCC slab, probably you all know that the construction engineer always tell that, sir, construction is difficult. But whenever you go for demolition, demolition is much more difficult than construction. So you have to demolish a solid RCC slab, and then you have to rescue the people. Even for example, there is a building failure, Mugalivakam, wherever the building collapsed. So the people were rescued. A few of the people were they got inside the the concrete. So after the collapse of the building, so still we are able to have rescued a few people whenever they are they inside the trapping. So the most of our design thing, you make the ductile means it is going to collapse in a ductile manner, and then we can we can safeguard our life. So most of the construction material, we all know that masonry and concrete. Most of in India, we follow masonry and concrete, and steel is used as a reinforcement. Now, ductility for the good seismic performance. Again, if you are, this is the chain analogy is shown in the right hand side. You have many brittle links are there. Suppose you have a ductile link. Ductile link is marked here. Whenever you are loading this chain, what happens? Now the brittle links do not yield. Only the ductile link is going to be yield, and then because of the yielding, you are going to get bonding. So that is the chain analogy shown. What is the original chain with the ductile link, and if it is loaded, how it is going to behave. So again, the ductile behavior is explained. Brittle behavior and ductile behavior. Brittle behavior, it reaches ultimate and fail, whereas ductile behavior, after reaching the ultimate also, there is a large strain, large amount of strain, it dissipates, and then it's going to fail. That is what your ductile behavior. Now, if you look at the detailing, first of all, I want to just tell what is the difference between the gravity detailing and then the seismic detailing. Now, if you look at the portal frame, it is explained in a simple portal frame. You have here one beam, and then you have here two columns, and then a foundation. Now the gravity load, you know that gravity load is nothing but they put some sandbags on the top. So whatever the slab load or the dead load and live load is simulated. Now, whenever you do the structural analysis, what you are going to get? You are going to get the bending moment. So the bending moment diagram is shown in using the pink color. So you know that so you are going to get the negative moment at the beam column joint and the positive moment at the mid span. Similarly, the negative moment at your beam column joint. So similarly, the column, you are going to get the bending moment variation is like this. So if you look at it, where the tension occurs, okay, at the support region, suppose you look at the beam, at the support, the top portion, the tension occurs, the B slide, you look at the B slide. So the top portion, the tension occurs, and then in mid-span, it's the bottom tension occurs. And similarly, on the right-hand side, the top portion tension occurs in the beam. Suppose you look at the column, on the extreme right portion, you are going to get the tension, and in the inner portion, you are going to get the tension. Similarly, for the other column also, left extreme and then right, you are going to get it. It's going to vary based upon the bending moment. So what it indicates that the steel requirement at the top region in the beam, at the support, and then mid-span region, you need the bottom. So similarly, you have a column, one side you have the left face, another one is on the right face. On the other thing, you need the right face and left face. This is for your steel require based upon your gravity load. Now, whenever you look at the lateral loading part, whenever you look at the lateral load, earthquake load, actually it's going to be a displacement load because the ground is going to shake. Because of that, you are going to get the force. But still, for simplicity, we consider it a load and then we design. So earthquake load, if you look at it, the earthquake may act from left to right, and the earthquake may also change its direction. So the arrow mark indicates that the earthquake may act in the first figure. On the right hand side, you look at it, the red arrow shows that the earthquake force is going to act from left to right. On the next direction, if you look at it, this is an arrow from right to left. So the steel required is marked here, and then bending moment diagram is given below. Now, if you look at it, whenever you are acting from left to right, the red marks, whatever shown in that location, what you need the tension reinforcement. Whenever the earthquake reverses, if you look at the other zones, you need the tension reinforcement. So if you look at the final diagram, so for earthquake detail, what happened? Both in the beam, you have a bottom face as top face. Similarly, column, the left face and right face, all the faces, you need the reinforcement. Whenever you design for the earthquake, you must provide steel for all the faces because it is going to change in their magnitude. It may act from left to right or right to left, or in the worst case, it can act in any direction also. That direction, what we have to do for simplicity, for the analysis purpose, we are going to resolve it in 1-2 direction, and then we are designing the structure. So this is the basic requirement of the steel. What is the difference between the steel requirement for gravity loading and what is the steel requirement for the earthquake loading? The steel requirement for gravity loading only at the few locations, it is not going to change. Whereas in earthquake, it requires in all the places the steel is required. So that is what you were the detail. Now, probably before entering into 13920, because I am going to cover the entire lecture for the benefit of the practicing engineer and a few important aspects to the structural design engineer. Suppose you want the structural design engineer, if you want to detailedly know about what is 13920, so where there can be a separate lecture for the structural designers for 1390 course. Now, this lecture is attended by both students as well as the field engineers and design engineers. So because of that, the more attention is given on the practices and a few important aspects on the design aspect. So that I am going to cover. Now, if you look at it, see, you know the practices. Practices are very, very important. And detailing even the gravity load detailing, whatever I discussed about SP34 detailing, you look at it in the diagram, the actual construction. So the stirrups, you know that we have a rectangular or square stirrup, but you look at the condition of that. Okay, you have bars are like this. So this is in practice. It is taken in one of the slides. So the people are not aware what is the importance. Even though they are using the full the whatever required amount of steel, whatever required as per the design, they are using it. But is it proper way of detailing? The detailing is missing. If we look at this, the bars are the stirrups are going to be out of the bar. Okay, the main bars are there. So it is not going to restrain it. So that's how you are going to have. And if you look at the slide, in the left hand side, there is a larger spacing of your reinforcements, the stirrup spacing. They are going to put a very, very large spacing, but that is not going to be helpful for our as per the, or it is not fulfill the requirement of IS 1320, or I can say that even it is not fulfilling the requirement of SP34 also. Now bars are cut at different locations. The bars are bent. These are some of the errors in practice. So the bars are bent. The column bar should be vertical, but it's going to be inclined like this. And then they are improper concreting what they are doing. So these are the ignorant, whatever they are adopting at the field. Okay. And then lapping. You look at the lap bars, there are restrictions. I will just discuss in detail on that. You look at the column. All bars are now cut at the same location. So all bars, suppose you want further extension column, so the lapping will occur in all the bars in only one location. And similarly, if you look at it on the left hand side, so the beam bar, it is not properly taken into the column. So you look at it, it's a smaller portion only they are going to, it is a smaller length is inside the column, whereas you can clearly see that the beam bar is not taken into properly inside the column, and they are not properly into they are anchored into the column. So that is shown in that. So these are some of the ignorance, or currently people are not following their good practices. The good practices are very, very important. Now we come to the design of how the beam is going to resist the force. Okay, so already I have discussed, because we are going to provide the steel both in bottom as well as the top. The support region you need the top bars, and then whereas the midspan you need the bottom bars. So long straight bars placed along the length, probably you know that. And then closed loop stirrups, small diameter stirrups placed vertical and regular intervals along the length. So if you look at the beam alone, you are going to have the main reinforcement, the longitudinal bars are there, and then you are going to have the stirrups are there. Both main reinforcement and stirrups is provided in the beam. Now, what are the basic types of failures of the beam? What way the beam can fail? The first fail is a structural failure. Normally, the beam is going to bend and fail. So the first failure is going to be a structural failure. And then the failure can be of two types. It can be a brittle failure or it can be a ductile failure, as I mentioned earlier. Suppose you look at the brittle failure, relatively more steel is present on the tension phase, crushes in compression, which is undesirable. Now in practice, most of the times what the people or the construction worker thinks that adding more steel is going to be advantageous. Suppose even at the site, suppose there is some variation. For example, you are constructing a small building. Suppose your one room dimension is changed. For example, you are designing a building with a 12 feet span. Okay. If you are designing a beam of 12 feet span, suppose the owner of the building says that I need a larger hall. I need the 16 feet size. Okay. Instead of 12 feet, he needs 4 more feet extra, 16 feet. So obviously, you know that the bending moment will increase because it's based upon the span, WL squared by 8 or WL squared by 12 and WL squared by 24 for a fixed condition. So what you need the more steel because of the increase in span. That is agreeable. But the span increase, what the people used to do, they are not designing it again. Because they say that when you go, you have to contact the designer and then you have to redesign and then arrive the reinforcement. Instead of that, what happens? The site engineers, they are taking their own decision at the site without designing it. So what they will say, instead of 3 16 mm diameter bar, the first day evening they used to tell, you provide 3 number of 20 mm diameter bar. Without designing, they will say that instead of 316 and then 3 number of 20 mm bar. Now the construction work might have completed, they have started early morning the work and then they have started providing the 320 mm diameter bar. But latter part, what happens? The latter part, what happens? The next day morning, even the site engineer, because he has not done the design. So what happened? Next day morning, he may say that no, not 320. You provide extra 2 more 20. Instead of 320 bars, you provide 520 also. Now, whenever you are going to provide more steel, what will happen? Your failure is not the under reinforced failure. Probably you know that there is a failure of the various section failure. We used to tell the balanced failure, that we can call it as a balanced section, and then the failure is a under reinforced section and the failure of over reinforced section. Suppose balanced section, if you are considering it, we are using 2 materials. One is concrete, another one is steel. Both will reach simultaneously the maximum stress at the same time. So that is going to be called as your requirement. So that section is going to be called as a balanced section, but that is not practically feasible or possible. Now normal design is the under reinforced section where the steel reaches the failure first, so concrete will come fail next. So that type of failure is a ductile failure. Whereas if you are providing more steel on the member, what will happen? The steel will not fail, the concrete will fail first. So whenever your concrete failure first, that failure is going to be called brittle failure. That's what it's explained here. Relatively more steel is present on the tension phase, crushes in compression, which is undesirable. So what we should do, we have to follow the ductile failure. So relatively less steel is present on the tension phase, steel yielding first, and then redistribution occurs in the beam until eventually concrete crushes. So that is the difference between the brittle failure and ductile failure. So we want ductile failure and then less. Because of that, you have to provide less steel. So increasing steel or providing more steel is not advantageous. Then another, we discussed about the flexural failure. So another important failure is going to be the shear, because whenever you're talking bending and shears are complementary with each other. So whenever you have bending, you have a shear. So the shear failure, normally shear failure is explained here. You have a concrete column and beam. So normally the shear failure occur in any beam because at the support the shear is maximum. So whenever you look at the crack, the 45-degree crack, so that shows that this failure is going to be shear failure. So a beam may also fail due to shearing action. The shear is going to be resisted by concrete as well as the stirrup. So mainly we are going to consider whenever you talk about the shear failure. So what you have to provide? You have to provide the stirrups. So closed loop stirrups are provided to avoid such shearing action. Shear damage occurs when the area of the stirrups are insufficient. So if you are not providing the insufficient area, where I have shown in the first in the photograph, where the spacing of stirrups is very large. So shear failure is a brittle failure. So you have to be very careful. The shear failure is a brittle failure. Therefore, shear failure must be avoided in the design of RCC beam. So the sudden failure we have to avoid. So shear failure is the sudden failure. So we have to avoid the shear failure. Now coming to that, how we are going to resist. We have talked about the flexural failure. We discussed about the shear failure. Flexural failure and shear failure. Flexural failure, we are going to provide the longitudinal bar, and then shear, for taking that, we are going to provide the stirrup. So longitudinal bars are provided to resist flexure. Occurs on both the faces at the ends and on the top of the face, at the ends and on the bottom face at the midline. Okay. So the code says that at least 2 bars go through the full length of the beam at the top as well as bottom of the bar. So whatever you are in the diagram, you look at it, you have a column and then beam. So at least minimum we have to have 2 bar is going to be in the full length of the beam. Okay. At the end of the beam, the amount of steel provided at the bottom of the steel is half of that of the top. So whenever you talk about the steel here, you can reduce the steel 50% on the support region. The bottom steel can be cut in the support location at the bottom. It's a 50% bar, you can do that. So that you can provide. That is with respect to the your flexure. And then whenever you talk about the shear, stirrups held in 3 ways: carry vertical shear force and resist diagonal crack, protect concrete from bulging outward due to flexure, and prevent buckling of the compressed longitudinal bar due to the flexure. Now, if you look at the stirrups are very, very important elements. Whenever you talk about the ductile detailing, the ductile detailing should be followed, and then various codal 13920 criteria are given, and then the latest code IS 13920 is the 2016 code. Now I am going to have some comparison with the old code 1992, and as well as we are going to have the 2016 code. Now whenever you talk about the stirrups is a very important thing. Normally if you look at that, the stirrups must be provided with a 135-degree hook. This is very, very important. Okay, why these 135-degree hooks are there? If you look at that, the diagrams are given. So the hook is intact. Whenever the building is shakes, the hook, what will happen? It will not open up, because you are providing 135-degree hook. It is very difficult. Even the beam is shaking, the hook will not open up. But normally in practice, we provide 90-degree hook. We will bend the bar in the 90-degree. Whenever the earthquake shakes, what happens? The hook will open up. Because of the hook open up, the bar length is going to be more, and then the reinforcing bar is going to buckle, and then it is going to fade. So the code, important thing, whenever you talk about the ductile detailing, one very important, even though we talked about the primary steel like a flexural and other steel requirement, the stirrup requirement is very, 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 very important. So whenever, even if you are not designing your structure for even seismic condition also, what happens? If you are having a good practices, you provide the stirrups at 135-degree hook, even the building is capable of resisting mild and moderate earthquakes. So in construction site, you have to be very, very careful, or you have to ensure that you have to provide all the stirrups, even though whenever you receive a drawing, you look at that and then you provide 135-degree hook for all the stirrups, both in beams and columns. So, and again, the construction is given. If you look at that, normally in practice they will all the hooks will be in one direction only, but you have to provide alternately. Okay, you can look at this diagram. So one hook is on this left side bar, another hook is on the right hand side. Like that, they are going to alternate it. So the important is 135-degree hook. In addition to that, what is the hook length? The hook length is given more than 10 times the diameter of the bar. And then the minimum steel for the hook, nowadays we are not using the 6 mm bar. The minimum diameter required for stirrups is 8 millimeters. Probably in steel, I want to just inform you, you should know what are the diameter of the bars available in the market. Okay, whenever you do that, you should get, normally you know that we get a, some of the standard diameters is available in the market. Suppose you look at the market, you will take 6 mm bar, and then 7 millimeter of the bar is not available. So 6 mm bar, then 8 mm bar, then 10 mm, 12 mm, 16 mm, 20 mm, 25 mm, 32 mm, and 40 mm bars are available. So depends on the purpose you have to choose based on your area requirement. And then whenever you are talking about that, there are 4 classes are given. Both IS 456 also give some minimum requirement. In addition to that, the 13920 requirement is also there, and in detailing as per SP 34 also you have to follow. Now, whenever you are talking about the syrup, whenever, because we are in most of the cities in zone 3 and higher, the very few cities are comes under zone 2 when in earthquake design. So whenever you are going to in zone 3, and then whenever you talk about the coastal zones where corrosion is more, etc. So now the minimum diameter of the cirrus bar is 8 millimeter. That is normally this practice. So minimum requirement you have to, anyway you have to verify it, but you have to use minimum diameter is going to be 8 millimeter diameter. And whenever you use 8 millimeter or 10 millimeter diameter as a cirrus, what is your hook length? Hook length is going to be 10 times the diameter. Suppose you take that, you have a 8 mm bar, so 10 into 8, 80 millimeter. So that means you have to provide at least 3 inches is going to be your hook length. So the 2 important thing you have to carry, that is, one is all the syrups you have to hook with the 135-degree hook, and you have to provide at least 3 inches going to be the hook length. Now, there are conditions are given, diameter at least 6 mm, but not less than 8 millimeter. So that's what the code says also for beams longer than 5 meter. 135-degree hooks at both ends and 10 times diameter of the extension. Maximum spacing is less than the half the depth of the beam. Okay. Suppose you look at this, here there are, in this diagram, in the beam diagram, you have a column and then beam. So the columns are divided into 2 regions. That is, one is 2D. From the column face, it is going to be divided into 2D distance. And then there is a distance called D by 2. And then the right hand side is again 2D. Whereas you look at it, from the diagram itself, we can clearly see that the syrups we have to provide closely near the beam column joint. We have a column and then beam. So near the beam column joint, we have to place very closer steel. And then after that region, the 2D region, what you have to do, where D is the depth of the beam. The D is the depth of the beam. Okay. So for other region, you should not be more than D by 2. For example, if you are having a beam of say 300 millimeter, 3 divided by 2 is 150 millimeter. So if you are having 300 millimeter beam, the syrup spacing in the middle region, it should not be more than 150 millimeter, that is 6 inches. But most of the cases, they provide not less than the 8 inch or 2 millimeter, 200 millimeter. So that is not acceptable. So if you are providing it, the depth, whatever the depth of the beam, so D by 2 is to be provided in the middle region, and then we have to provide very closer syrups in the beam column joint. So maximum spacing is less than the half the depth of the beam. Maximum spacing less than quarter of the depth of the beam for twice the depth of the beam from the support. So it is less than D by 4. Okay. So D by 4 in this region, beam column region, and D by 2 in the mid region. That is what your detailing code says. Now, where you have to provide the lapping. Suppose you are going to get, normally we provide lapping. Lapping is provided because of that your building is so lengthwise it will be large. You cannot provide the single bar. Whatever available bar you are going to do the lapping. So where you have to provide the lapping, also very, very important. So the lapping, suppose you take the beam, in the lapping in the midspan, again the bending moment is maximum. And whereas the support region, again negative bending moment is maximum. So you have to avoid this region, and then the remaining area you should lap it. So what is the lapping of the longitudinal bar? Made away from the face of the column. So you should not lap it adjacent to column. So you keep slightly away from the column. Okay, that region is given. Not made at location where there is a likely to stretch by the large amount and yield. Okay, so wherever the yielding, the mid span and then more moment region, it's going to yield. So that region you have to avoid. At the location of lab, vertical shear is to be provided at a closer spacing. Now you look at that this diagram. This bottom bar, red color bar is the bottom bar. Again, we are going to have the right side. You can see the lap bar. Where in the lapping region, it is going to be done very, very closely. Because otherwise, what happens? Whenever they shake, the bar both will rub with each other, and then it will the force may not transfer to the other member. Now you have to have the force transfer from one bar to the other bar. It transfers to the lapping. But whenever the lap is intact, only it will transfer. To ensure that what happens, we are going to provide more stirrups in the lapping zone. So the spacing of stirrups not more than 150 millimeters in the lapping zone. That is given in the code. So where you have to provide the lapping is permitted, and then you should not provide at the where the bending moment is maximum, as well as you have to be away from the column. So that condition you have to fulfill, and then you have to lap the bar. Now so far what we have discussed about, we discussed about your beam. Now what we are going to discuss, about the column. So when we talk about the column also it has to sustain two types of damages. One is axial flexural, so combined compression. Okay, so axial flexural failure. The other one is shear failure. Okay, so the shear failure, again axial flexural failure, we are going to provide the reinforcement in vertical direction in column. Okay, and then for shear failure, again we are going to provide the lateral hook we are going to provide. So in the column also subjected to two type of damages. One is axial flexural damage, another one is the shear failure. Okay, so the column, again you look at the column, there are main bars, that is vertical bars, and then you are going to have the stirrups. Whatever I told on beam, so it is applicable to column also. You can look at it. The stirrups is 135-degree hooks, and it is alternately hooked, and then there are 10 times diameter bars or times the diameter is provided as a hook length. So all these things are whatever we discussed for the beam, it is also applicable for the column also. So whenever you talk about the closely spaced horizontal closed ties helps in three ways. What are the ways is advantage? They carry the horizontal shear force induced by earthquake and thereby resist the diagonal shear crack. So whatever the shear coming from earthquake, so your stirrups must be capable of withstanding that shear. That is one point. Second aspect, they hold together vertical bars and prevent them from excessively bending outward. Now what happens whenever you provide the vertical bar, and then you look at the top hook, this hook, whenever the vertical bar tries to move in the horizontal direction, okay, one direction, whenever it is trying to move in the horizontal like this, whatever I am showing in my cursor, in this direction, so the horizontal tie, this tie will be prevent this movement of this bar. Similarly, on the other direction, in this direction, the perpendicular, this tie is going to, this tie will prevent the movement. So whenever you talk about the vertical reinforcement, the vertical reinforcement should be arrested by stirrups. The vertical reinforcement should not be allowed to move both directions. So that must be restrained by your stirrup. And then that bar has to be properly tied with the stirrups bar. The main bar must be properly tied with the stirrups bar. Probably you know that we use binding wires for tying them. And then whenever you talk about that, you know is the bar benders normally whenever they use two binding wire for tying them. There are sometimes they use only single wire. Sometimes you want to be a very quality work, the people used to use two binding wires and then they tie it up in a proper manner. So the bar is what happens, the stirrups is going to prevent the bar movement in both the directions. And then whenever the third point, they contain the concrete in the column within the closed stirrups. The ends of the ties must be bent at 135-degree hooks. Such hooks tend to prevent opening of flukes and consequently buckling. So the bar is going to compress to the forces that whenever the stirrups is going to prevent the buckling length, whenever the hook open up, the length is going to move. So what happens? The concrete, the steel bar is going to buckle. So buckle and then fade. So it can be avoided if you are having the stirrups at the closer interval. Now, there are 13920 requirements. In column where spacing between the corner bar exceeds the 300 millimeters. So whenever you are having the bar, now you are in the column, we are providing the what 8 number of bars are provided. So whenever the spacing length is more than 300 mm, what we have to provide, at least you have to provide the single hook. That's what you are. The black color of the hook shown. The green color is going to be the hook. It is going to be two like the stirrups. So it starts from here and then it's connecting to all the bars. Now, if you look at the other bar next to the corner bar, what will happen? One direction movement is prevented, whereas the other direction it can freely move. So that can be avoided if you are providing at least a single hook bar shown in the black color. So that is going to prevent the bar in the movement of the bar in the other direction. So all bars in the column should be provided with the hook. So that is given in there. So in columns where spacing between the corner bar exceeds 300 mm, additional links with 180 degree. Now this is 180 degree. Hook hence for ties to be effective in holding the concrete in its place and to prevent the buckling of the vertical bar. So you have to provide the additional, what we talk about 135 degree hook. This is the 180 degree hook we have to provide. At least a single hook. Normally we call it as a single hook we have to provide, and then to prevent the bar move in to prevent from the moving of a bar in other direction. So that is very important. Now coming to the column, we talked about the beam, where we discussed we have the beam column region, we have to provide the very close stirrup. So similarly, what happened? The column also, you look at the diagram. So the column is there. This is one floor we have taken into for the discussion. You have a beam and beam. This is the one floor to floor. So the total from the bottom of the beam to the top of the beam on the bottom floor is called as your height of the column, HT. Okay. So the total height is going to be the bottom of the roof beam to the top of the floor beam. The bottom of the roof beam to the top of the floor beam, it is going to be called as a total height of the column. Whenever you take the height of the column, it is going to be divided into two regions. That is, you are going to have height by 4 region, that is beam column region. So HT by 4. So if your height is 3 meters, so you are having going to be 0.75 meter. Okay, 3 divided by 4. It's going to be 0.75 meter, 0.75 meter and 0.75 meter. So that is going to be your beam column. The R is going to be effective region on the beam column. So whenever you are talking about the beam column region, you should provide closer stirrups. You can look at that. The closer stirrups are provided on the beam column region. And here you are going to look at it. Why you are going to provide the very close stirrups in this region? If you look at that, the bars are lapped at this region. Okay. So it is not the requirement because we are going to lap the column bar. Okay. Where to lap the column bar? Again, in practice, what the people used to do, they will lap the bar above the floor beam. It should not be done because you have seen the bending moment diagram. The bending moment is the minimum at the mid zone. So you have to lap it at the mid zone of the column. Any column, you have to lap only in the middle region, middle zone. Okay. Whenever middle zones are there, already we discussed about that. You have to provide because we have done the lapping, so you have to provide the closer stirrups. It should not be more than 150 millimeters. Now coming to the beam column region, that is HT by 4. Okay, we have to provide the more close stirrups. That is, it should not be more than D by 4, but need not be less than 75 millimeter, nor more than 100 millimeter. So probably it varies from 3 inch to 4 inch or 75 millimeter to 100 millimeter in the beam column region. So whenever you provide the column, so whenever the HT by 4, normally there is going to be 3 meter or it's going to be the floor height. So 750 millimeter from the bottom and 750 millimeter from the top, you should provide very, very closer steel. So that is explained in the whole slide, that you are going to have closer region here, closer reinforcement here, again here closer reinforcement. So the various conditions are given here. So I don't want to go through elaborately. the height, what is given in the height confinement zone, spacing in CZ zone, and then spacing in the lab zone, and then spacing of the type in the rest of the zone. So all the 4 zones are given, and then you have to follow like that. Another very important zone is called the beam column joint itself. The beam column zone we discussed. Now we are going to discuss about the beam column joint. Now, why it is very, very important? The most of the structure failed because of the failure of the beam column joint. Because in common practice, what we try to do, we take the stirrups, we stop at the bottom of your column, that is bottom of the beam in the column zone. On the bottom of the beam itself, we are going to stop it, and then we are going to continue the stirrups from the again top of the beam alone. We are going to continue in the column, and similarly the beam stirrups also we stop on the edge of the both the faces of the column. So when you talk about the beam column joint, so whatever you are talking about in this zone, the like a orange color, this dot, you can look at it. That zone, it consists of fully concrete only. There is no reinforcement. The beam column joint is full of with concrete. There is no reinforcement. So because of that, what happened? The many failure occurred in bridge region because of the beam column region failed first. So where there is a 45-degree shear crack occurred in the beam column joint, and then that triggers the failure of the entire structure. That triggers the failure of the entire structure. Okay, so that you have to what the code now says that this explanation is given, how your forces are transferred. That's what I am going to discuss about the tension and shear of the beam column joint, and then distortion occurred due to the shear. Okay, what happened? This is going to fail this joint. So to avoid that, what we are going to be very important is you have to provide stirrups in the beam column joint. That is very, very important. To avoid the beam column joint failure, the beam column joint failure is a brittle failure because we are not providing steel in that zone. But now the code says that you must provide steel, that is stirrup steel, in the beam column joint zone. Okay, so whatever you are going to apply the discuss that hook, you have to provide in the beam column zone. You look at that. The beam column zone is very important. The red color mark shows that the stirrups provided in the beam column joint. Even practicing engineers or the site engineers, when you look at it, when you start practicing it, even the people, the bar bender is not providing the steel in the beam column joint, you insist that the joint is very, very important. We have to protect that joint. Whenever you are providing the steel at the joint, so it will be, the structure will become earthquake resistant. So because of that, we have to insist that the bar bender to provide, because it's difficult. So when the construction point, it's going to be slightly difficult. Okay, so this may delay the work progress because you have to spend a lot of time and then you have to detail it. But still, whatever we are going to work on, we work on that the building has to be, this is for earthquake. So this detailing you have to meticulously you have to follow in practice. So the column width at least 20 mm diameter, at least 20 times the diameter of the largest beam bar. Closed loop steel ties in beam column joints confined to increase the concrete joint, and also resist shear, reducing the cracking and pressing of the concrete. That is the essence. Now here, how you have to, the construction stage 1 to 3 is explained here. You provide this zone, okay, the top bar and other, you don't tie the top bar. So what you have to provide? You have to provide the stirrups. You can look at it, stirrups, and then you insert the stirrups, and then you tie it up. This diagram shows that how you are going to provide the horizontal stirrups in your beam column zone before tying up with your main bar, that is top bar, and then you are going to ensure that these regions also provided with the stirrups. Now there are some basic principles. Normally in earthquake design, whenever we talked about that, now always we used to tell strong column and weak beam, or the column stiffness should be much more stronger than your beam stiffness. So what happens? Whenever the column fails first, the entire structure fails. So column failure first means the entire structure fails. But whenever the beam fail means, what happens? The beam failure can be easily repairable, and then it's a local, it's classified into localized failure. It's a local failure. So the whole structure will not fail whenever the beam fails. But whenever the column fails, the whole structure may fail. So you have to be very, very careful. So obviously what we should do, we should have more strong column and then weak beam. So the column is more, means the column will not fail and then the beam will fail first. So that failure is acceptable or that is required because the beam fail is the local fail, the entire structure won't fail. Now if you look at that, in the right hand side diagram, if you are having the column, okay, we are going to provide the column and then the beam. So in the first diagram itself, what happened? The column width and then beam width are same. Most of the practice, we provide 230 millimeters is going to be the width of the column. And also we provide 230 mm is going to be the width of the beam. Now if we look at the rectangular bar, now this beam bar, we are not able to take inside the column because you have a column vertical bar. So it is going to hindrance. So what they are going to bend, they are going to bend inside the column and then inside the bar, column bar, and then they are going to take it. So this is the poor practice. Okay, the practice is the poor practice. So what is a good practice? So what happens if you are providing more size of the column, the size of the columns and the below figure, that is B, good practice. We are looking at it, look at it. So the column size is more. So where the column size is, say you have 400 mm, your beam size is 230 millimeter. So obviously the beam bar, straight bar, you can take it into the column. So always whenever talking about the earthquake design, the seismic design and 13920 detailing, now we have to always make the column is strong when compared to the beam. So and also it helps for, we are going to detail it. So the detailing is going to be very, very helpful. Otherwise in practice for how we are going to bend the bar and take it. So there is a lot of problem, and then this practice is not the whatever we require, the specific transfer of forces, that we are not able to ensure that. So that is important. And compared to that, again when you talk about that, okay, so the bar, the narrow column and wide column, what happened? Narrow column, what happened? You have to provide the LD from the face of the column on the top left figure. You will look at that my cursor. So the top, you have to provide the LD. So normally the people used to anchor the top bar, but the bottom bar they will not anchor it. But according to 13920, you have to have anchor both top as well as the bottom bar. So you must provide the development length for LD for both the top bar as well as the bottom bar of the beam. Suppose if you are providing the narrow beam, what happens? This bar length is more. You look at it, the bar length is more, and then you have to take into the column. So what will happen? The congestion of reinforcement will happen in the column zone. Suppose you take a wide beam. That's what you are having a wide beam. What happens? You look at the lap length. It's just the LD is going to be just sufficient to bend it like a beam zone itself. You don't need the extra bars on a cake. It fulfills the development length requirement because of the wider. You take more horizontal bars horizontally, and then you take a vertical length is smaller length. So like that you can provide. So that is a better detailing. So what we have to do, we have to anchor both beam top bar as well as beam bottom bar, and then you have to lap according to the force. So what is the development length is given? That is explained in this slide. Okay, LD. Okay, development length. Okay, so the conditions are given that we have to follow for the beam column design. And then the bond length again is very, very important. Both bar need bond length for both compression as well as the tension, because I already told you the steel we are providing both zone, compression zone as well as tension zone. So we have to have calculate the bond length requirement for compression zone, and we have to calculate the bond length required for the tension zone. The tension zone bond length will be more when compared to the compression zone length. Okay, tension zone length will be more. Okay, normally in conventionally, sometimes there is a charts are available, standard charts are available based upon the diameter of the bar. You can provide that. The thumb rule, when you look at the thumb rule, it will vary from 40 to 56 times the diameter. It varies from 40 to 56 times the diameter is going to be your development length in terms of the diameter of the bar. So 10 mm diameter bar, if you're taking, if you're having a 56D, suppose you say it is going to be 560 millimeter. So you need the 560 millimeter. So whenever you are talking about the lap length, so it varies from 40 to 56D. So the maximum length requirement is 56 diameter. So whatever the length, lapping length required for tension will be more when compared to the compression. Okay. There are some criteria are given in 13920, and it has to be related with the 1893 also. The very important condition I want to inform you, because the two webinars we are insisting, or just we are informing you that whenever you are going to follow, whenever you are in zone 3 and more, so obviously we have to follow 13920 detailing. If you are having zone 3, that Chennai, Coimbatore, everything comes under zone 3. And most of the cities are coming zone 3 and above. Very few cities are coming to zone 2. So in that case, what you should know, you have to have 13920 detailing mandatory we have to follow. And then the 13920, again the code says that now FE41 bars are not available. The revised code says that we can go with the FE500 or 550, and the special bars like ductile bar, it will have more ductility. Last webinar we told the D bar, ductile bar, what is the difference between IS500 and IS500, FE500 and FE500D? 500 bar, when compared to the 500 bar, FE500D bar will have more elongation. But whenever you want to follow 13920, the code says that the higher percentage of the reinforcement, even FE500. So normally, if you look at very carefully, even 500 bar, whether you are able to use, if you are having the elongation percentage more given in your total requirement. Otherwise, the 13920 is not permitting use of that particular part. Okay, so that you have to very careful on that. Okay, so there are some many the latest code IS 13990 is 2016 code. The various requirements are now changed. Okay, so again we have to discuss very detailedly, because as I initially at the beginning of lecture I told, whatever requirement required for the field engineers, you can practice in the field. I have given important. There are design guidelines are given, various design of elements, structural various members, okay, various sizing of members, all these things are given. The 13920 1993 code and the 13920 2016 code. There are various comparisons are given. Okay, so this is mainly required for the design engineers. So I am just going to share this slide. You can go through this slide for whenever we want to know more detailed about that. Okay, this is mainly required for design engineers. So I am not elaborating it now. Whatever I have covered is only for the field engineers, and a very important point to be whatever should be noted by the design engineers also covered in this section. Okay, so there are various guidelines are given. You just given the latest code is IS 13920 2000 code. How to detail wall, what is the minimum reinforcement, everything for the better practice they have changed based on the recent occurrence of the earthquake, and based on the research output, the 13920 the code revised, and then the various guidelines are given in 13920 2016 code. Okay, so various classes are given, and how to detail on various numbers also there. So because of the time requirement, and I'm stopping my lecture here. If any questions are there, I am ready to take up. And then further information, you can just go through it, and then you can email also, and then you can clarify your doubts. So you can call my phone number, and then you can clarify your doubts. Thank you. I can now take up if there is any questions are there.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So there's a question from Mr. Shivaprasad. He has asked, what will happen if you use more steel than required quantity?
Yeah, that's what I already explained. The more steel, if you are using it, the steel will not fade, because steel more area you are providing it.
Correct.
So the steel is strong when compared to the concrete. So what happens? So before steel failing, the concrete will fail.
Fail.
Suppose you take the steel bar, how it fails. Suppose you understand. Even you take a small binding wire. Okay. So if you want to just stretch it, you cannot, it is not going to fade. It takes water, it's going to yield and then fade. Whereas if your concrete fade, it's a sudden fade. So providing more steel is not advantage. So we have to, in the design itself, we design all section as a unreinforced section. So the steel quantity is slightly less. So the concrete will develop the maximum stress. No, the steel will develop the maximum stress first, then compared to the concrete developing maximum strength. So whenever you provide more steel, the failure is a concrete will fail. The concrete failure is a brittle failure, and it must be avoided.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. There's one more question from Mr. Muhammad Dadil. Is that what happens if the anchoring of the bars is not sufficient
Okay.
while giving development length?
Yeah, it's a very good question. What is the, if you are not providing the anchorage length, you assume that you have a column and then beam. So if your beam bar, if you are not giving the development length, what will happen? The force will transfer, and then the force will be go to the concrete. The pressure, whenever the beam bends, the tension in the tension carried by the tension bar, it will transfer to the column member or inside the concrete. So whenever it pushes the concrete, even you might have seen in some of the buildings where you have column and then beam, if you look at the exterior face of the column, because you are not providing the development length proper, whenever the beam bends, it creates the pressure and push the cover concrete. Whenever it pushes the cover concrete, so that is the weak spot where the corrosion starts. So that whatever the detailing, normally we used to tell the force must be flow like a water flowing in a canal. So the flow is going to be smooth. So to ensure the flow is going to be the smooth, we have to provide proper development length. If you are not providing the power development length, the force will be transferred via the concrete, whereas the internal cracks or micro cracks will occur in the concrete. Even if it is not visible also, what will happen? Your durability of the structure will reduce. So the proper detailing will ensure the proper force transfer, as well as it will increase the longevity of the building or durability of the building. That's why we have to provide the proper development length. And if it's very, very inadequate, for example, as I told, just I'll show you the other slide. Just for your own information, it's a very good question. I show the first slide. Okay. Because one of the building you can go through go to the newspaper, and also you can get the details of that. Okay. Now if you look at it in this diagram, the practice. Now the beam bars are provided. This is a column bar, but they have not provided with the adequate slab length. The column beam bar is not properly anchored into the column. So similarly, what happened when church building was constructed in Tirunelveli, they have not provided. It's a long span church building. What will happen? The beam length is very large. Okay, almost around 25 meter or 30 meter span. And then the column. They have not, similarly, what happened? They have not properly anchored it. And then they have concreting it. While concreting itself, what happened? The form of gave wave, and then the whole structure, the slab concreting collapsed. So sometimes if you are not able to provide it in the critical zone, even that triggers into, or that makes the structure to collapse also. Even there are cases, because of the very long span, you have to be very, very careful. Even short span, you can escape. But in the long span, you have to provide proper development length. Otherwise, the structure may fail also. So the development lengths are very, very important. So development lengths are important for long spans because it may trigger or it may cause collapse of the building. In case of the short spans also, if you are not doing the proper development length, what happens? It exerts the force on that, the cover concrete may fall, or it may introduce the internal cracks. So that may cause us the durability, the atmospheric agent like CO2 may enter because of the micro cracks, and then it may corrode and your structure life may be reduced. So the detailing and lab lengths are very, very important. Yeah, next question.
Thank you, sir. There's one more question from Mr. Venkateswaram. In repair or strengthening of columns, what precautions are to be taken in anchorage length of steel ribars to avoid buckling?
Can you repeat again? In repair and rehabilitation?
In repair of strengthening of columns, what precautions are to be taken in anchorage length of steel bars to avoid buckling?
Yeah, whatever the code prescribes, the same thing you have to follow in repair and rehabilitation. It's a construction or repair and rehabilitation. You have to follow the same codal provision, but extra precaution. Okay, how you are going to take. For example, suppose you are not able to provide the lap length for some reason. So what you can do is you can go for mechanical couplers. The alternate systems are available. You can use rebar couplers are nowadays available. So that rebar couplers we can use and then we can avoid the lap length. Or instead of lapping of the bars are now the advanced technology. The bars, the TMT process will allow the bar to, you can weld the bar. Okay. But whenever talking about the welding, okay, you cannot transfer the force partly by welding, partly by lapping. That should be avoided. But you can go for other type of technique wherever it is possible. You have to ensure alternate techniques you have to use, and then you have to do that. But with respect to the lap length, whether repair work or rehabilitation work or new construction work, the same thing you have to follow. Same codal guidelines you have to follow.
Okay.
So what in the other sense, because of the rehabilitation, sir, I may not have the length, so I cannot provide the lap length. So that you cannot avoid it. So to avoiding it, suppose you have some constraint, so you have to work out the alternate system, like you can weld it or you can provide mechanical coupler, and then you have to ensure that.
Any other question?
Yes, sir. There's one more question. Is there any standard lapping distance in all kind of structural beam, like what barbenders use?
Yeah, the lap length codal guidelines are available. You can go to the code guidelines. It's based on the diameter of the bar, and then so all the things are given in the code book itself. So standard lap lengths are available.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I think there's no more questions right now. I request all the attendees, if they have any questions, they can put it up either in the chat window or in the question and answer session window.
Okay. Are you collecting the feedback?
Yes, sir. We have shared the feedback form in the same chat window. I request all the attendees to click on the link. It's a Google form. They can give their feedback accordingly.
Can we wind up?
Yes, I think.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Professor Dr.
Yeah.
Senthil,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much for your excellent presentation.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I hope the presentation will enable the young budding engineers, and they will follow whatever guidelines you have given to be followed at the site, and they will follow the right practice with confidence. I also thank the participants for their well-worded questions. And last but not the least, I thank my fellow colleague, Mr. Satish Kumar, for providing the technical assistance. Thank you very much. We will meet you all in the next week, same time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, every attendees.
Thank you.